And we're gonna have you, if you have questions, you can put them in the chat and then we'll wait till the end for them to answer the questions. Okay? All right. Well, thank you, Elena and Rebecca, for being here, and I'll let you start.
All right, sounds good. Thank you, Lori. We're so excited to be here. I'm Elena. I work on the Stable program, and part of my role is to provide outreach and advocacy on this incredible program. We just celebrated our 7-year anniversary, and we'll talk a little bit about the history of Stable Account, but definitely just wanted to at least let you all know that our program loves to engage with organizations across the state, families, individuals, anyone that can benefit from this program. We love to be able to spread the good news about it. And then, of course, also someone that helps me with our outreach is Rebecca Armstrong, who's also a Northeast Ohio resident. I'm in Columbus right now, but Becca is in our Northeast region, so I'll let her introduce herself as well.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, everyone. As Elena said, my name is Rebecca Armstrong. I'm with the State Treasurer's Office, and I manage kind of the Northeast Ohio area for the Treasurer, which includes promotion and outreach to the Stable program. So I work very closely with Elena and organizations like yours. So thank you for joining us today. And if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to reach out to us. We're here to serve you and excited to hear from you.
That's good. Thanks, Becca. All right, we tested this earlier. I'm going to share my screen, and hopefully that works as I have a great slideshow. All right. Thumbs up that we can see that. Okay, great. All right, so as Becca said, this slideshow is sort of just a great overview of the program itself. We're going to really get into the weeds about eligibility, enrollments, and then, of course, the process of using your Stable account funds, and then the management of the account itself. So I hopefully will be able to answer all of the questions that are brewing as I go through this. But if there's anything that you have in addition at the end, please feel free to just put it in the chat and we'll open it up. You're welcome to also unmute at the end. I think that Q&A on the chat might be a little bit easier for people to do at the end. So feel free to just kind of hold on to those questions and then we'll go ahead and get started. Okay. So I'm a very nostalgic type of person. I love to kind of know the history of how things kind of came to be. So the story of Stable is an incredible story because it took over 10 years of grassroots legislative efforts from a lot of families, a lot of individuals, a lot of organizations in the disability community that realized that there needed to be a change for those that were working and trying to have a financial future if they were receiving benefits. So this is Jenny Cunningham. She's actually a Columbus, Ohio resident. She serves on our Stable Account Advisory Board. And this photo was taken in probably June of 2016 when our program launched. She was one of the first account holders and actually legislated. She was part of the legislative team and group in DC that actually was part of the process for ABLE accounts to pass the legislation to pass. So she is an incredible person. We love having her part of the board. And the impact of Stable accounts is continuing on. There's a lot of still ongoing legislative changes and grassroots efforts that are making ABLE programs across the country even more impactful than they've ever been before, which we'll talk about. But going back to what ABLE is versus what Stable is, that ABLE Act that was passed in 2014 was the Achieving a Better Life Experience Act that allowed all states to implement an ABLE program. An ABLE program is a savings and investment account for those living with a disability that also might be on means-tested benefits. So Ohio's ABLE program is called Stable. So across the country, you're going to see a lot of different types of ABLE programs, but in general, it is a savings and investment program that allows individuals to save and start having long-term and short-term financial goals. And it will not impact their eligibility for means-tested benefits such as SSI and Medicaid. So prior to 2014, if an individual was on Medicaid or SSI, there was a massive cap on how much money could be in their asset limit. So if at any time they could only have $2,000, so this is how ABLE accounts were created. There needed to be a change. So ABLE accounts allow individuals to save way more than that $2,000 threshold. And if they put that money into their ABLE accounts, they can save that money for long-term financial goals. So ABLE accounts are very similar to these products listed here. Very similar to a 529 college savings plan. So a lot of families that have a loved one, they might set up a 529 college savings plan for them when they're born, and down the road, they might feel that education is just not the right route for them. They can actually roll the funds in a 529 college savings plan right into a SABLE account and use those funds on not only education, but other qualified disability expenses, which we'll talk about. ABLE accounts are also very similar to a savings account or a checking account, meaning that you can put money in and you can take money out. And then special needs trusts are also very similar. A lot of families might create a special needs trust for their loved one when they're born. Those are obviously done through a private attorney or a guardianship or estate planning attorney. There's a lot of different limits, tax rules, very much different than a SABLE account or an ABLE account, but they can go very much hand in hand with long-term goals as well. So these three products are very similar to what an ABLE account is. So the best benefits of an ABLE account is the ownership and the financial independence. So Jenny is obviously one of the first account holders in the state of Ohio. She actually works for Franklin County in Columbus, and she's had a SABLE account for over 7 years now, and she's able to work and put money right into her SABLE account, live independently, rely on that money for day-to-day expenses, qualified disability expenses. So it gives her that ownership, that financial independence that she can rely on. It also gives families that peace of mind that they can set up that account at a very early age. They can put money into that every single year. And by the time that their loved one is in their adult years, they can take money out of that and use it on long-term or short-term financial expenses or goals. And then in the state of Ohio, there is tax benefits as well. So moving away from ABLE, talking now about what SABLE is. SABLE is Ohio's ABLE program. We were the first state in the country to launch an ABLE program when this act was passed in 2014. It took about 2 years for everything to be set in stone, but once June 2016 happened, we were launched, and we actually have account holders in every single state, which is pretty incredible. So currently, if you live in the state of Ohio, we obviously encourage you to learn more about Ohio's ABLE program, but there's 47 ABLE programs across the country. We're a very robust program. We actually work with 12 partner states on outreach, collaboration ideas, ways to improve the program. Our online portal, our online management is very, very user-friendly, accessible-friendly, and we're really proud of the work that's gone into that over the years. So this is just us. This is actually Becca and I in Cleveland a few weeks ago on a Saturday at a Wealth Wellness event. As I mentioned, this program is a financial tool. It is a financial tool that is going to help individuals and families for many, many years, but it's serving such an incredible community. So it's such a social program. Families that have a loved one with a disability are always looking at schools, they're looking at resources, they're looking at benefits, they're looking at what are we going to do with our child when they turn 50 and we're no longer here. There's so many resources out in the state of Ohio, and we're really proud to be part of that community, just because SABLE is such an important piece of the puzzle with that. So we love being out on the road. We love being able to meet families and talk about this program. Okay, so in 2026, the eligibility is actually going to go up a little bit. That age 26 is going to bump up to 46, which is another legislative piece that obviously took a few years to pass. That was another grassroots accomplishment. But currently, in 2023, the eligibility piece is that an individual living with a disability that was diagnosed or occurred before age 26 is eligible for an account. That means that if somebody was born with a disability and they're in their 50s, they could qualify for a SABLE account. Plus, one of the following, they're also eligible to receive SSI or SSDI due to that disability. It doesn't mean that they have to be on those benefits to have a SABLE account. It just means that at some point they could be eligible to receive those benefits. Our website, sableaccount.com, has a ton of information about the eligibility piece if you're on the fence about the qualifications for that. And then in addition, the Social Security Administration website has a list of compassionate allowances conditions. It is a very lengthy list, and it actually is as a way that they are able to look at the qualifications for eligibility for benefits as well. So we always encourage families to visit that website, look at that list if you're on the fence of the qualifications of that eligibility piece. And then there's also self-certification as well. In addition to the eligibility quiz on our website, we also have the really easy process of enrollment. So it takes about 20 minutes to set up a SABLE account, which I said that at an event and someone said that's way too long, but there's a lot of things that go into getting on benefits and getting qualifications and sending in paperwork. And we all know that that can take some time, but for 20 minutes to set up a SABLE account is pretty easy and pretty good. And we're really proud of that. So if you have all of the right qualifications, we really encourage families to enroll online. As soon as you set up the account and deposit the $25 that's required, you'll get an email that your account is set up and ready to go, and you can start depositing money into that account as soon as possible. We do have a paper enrollment process. You can actually go to our website and download the forms. It's pretty lengthy, but as soon as you fill those forms out, you can mail them in, and our vendor will be in contact with you in terms of the process of that application. A lot of families may not have access to a computer. A lot of families or individuals may not be as computer friendly as others are. So we do want to offer that option to send in a paper application as well. And then at any time if an individual has questions about their accounts and they're just not able to get on the computer, you can call our vendor and they can pull up your account information and walk you through the process of withdrawing your funds for certain expenses as well. And the last slide has our customer service line number on that as well. Okay, so enrollments can be done by the individual with the disability, meaning that they could go to our website, they could fill in all the required information, and then the account would be opened on their behalf. They would be the beneficiary on the account. But in some cases, an authorized legal representative is required. So we call the authorized legal representatives an ALR. So this is just kind of a quick list of those that could be considered an ALR. A lot of times, you know, someone else has to kind of oversee the account, manage the funds. So this is just someone that could go to our website, open the account on behalf of somebody else, and they would still have access to manage those funds as well. Obviously, minors must have an ALR set in stone for the account, but as soon as they turn 18, the account can be in, they can have access to the account as well. So as soon as the account is created, there's a few ways that you can fund the accounts. You can do the external normal EFT funds transfer. So you can withdraw money from a checking or a savings account and put it right into a SABLE account. You can mail in a check and our vendor will deposit the check into your accounts. And then our third piece is our direct deposit piece. A lot of the account holders are working. They are proud to work. They get a paycheck every 2 weeks or every month, and they can actually go to their employer and say, I would like to have this percentage or all of my paycheck go right into my SABLE account, which is very, very inspiring. That is the quickest way that an individual can have those funds right in their SABLE accounts. In addition to the payroll direct deposit, as of June, we actually our ABLE program has been working with the Social Security Administration on implementing a new process of SSI funds to be deposited into the account as well. So currently, if an individual is receiving SSI funds on a monthly basis, they can have those funds go directly into their stable account without ever touching an external saving or checking account as well. There's been some confusion, I think, over the years on if you can actually put your SSI funds into your stable accounts, and you absolutely can. So that is the quickest way that you can put those funds into the account and then use those at a later time for qualified disability expenses as well. Okay. So in 2023, the contribution limits bumped up a little bit. So as you know, and prior to 2014, if an individual was on SSI, there was a $2,000 limit on how much money could be in their assets. So that's how stable account was created. So you'll notice here that those contribution limits, $17,000 per year, is massive compared to that $2,000 asset limit. So if you're not employed, an individual can contribute $17,000 from all sources into their stable account each year. If you are employed, you can contribute an additional $13,590, making that $30,590 each year. That is incredible. That money each year can sit there and grow. That can sit there and you can spend it on qualified disability expenses. But that just gives that individual and families an additional way to rely on a different account for long-term or short-term financial goals. The account has a lifetime balance of $523,000. These contribution limits are what we mirror from all other ABLE programs across the country. In fact, that's sort of the precedent from the IRS that oversees the program. And then any time that an individual might get close to hitting that contribution limit for the year, the system will automatically reject it. Did want to mention that if an individual has over $100,000 in their stable account and they're also receiving SSI, they could be subject to losing that eligibility piece of SSI. So SSI might look at your stable account and think you have over $100,000 in it. You're no longer eligible for SSI. That is obviously completely separate from our program, but that is something that is worth mentioning because a lot of individuals, in fact, we do know some stable account holders today that actually are close to that contribution limit that have exceeded that. It's not a guarantee, but SSI could definitely look at your assets and think that that is over the limit there. So the all sources is obviously from what we had mentioned earlier. If you're working, if mom and dad are contributing to the account, if you're taking money from an external checking or savings account, and then if you are also receiving SSI. We have a really great gifting page feature. So that allows family members to contribute directly into the stable account through the gifting feature. So that's kind of like if, you're graduating from high school and grandma wants to give you, $500 in cash, you can tell her, actually put it in my stable account. So it's very similar to like a GoFundMe, where you can contribute and give somebody money, and it can actually be put in the stable account and get much better use out of it. Of course, it does not count as a resource or income, but it does count as a source. So if you're working and you're also getting a lot of money from someone else that's gifting you, as long as it's below those contribution limits, then that money is protected in that account and it cannot be used against your eligibility for benefits. So as I mentioned earlier, a stable account is a savings and investment account. So a lot of our account holders will use their account as a bank safe option, meaning that when they contribute money each time into that account, they're using it as just a quote, normal savings account. But there are 4 Vanguard mutual fund options of investments ranging from aggressive to conservative. So that gives families and individuals that second piece of using that account as an investment account. So any returns from those accounts are not counted as the contribution limits here. But if you're just using it as a normal bank safe option, that obviously is a little bit more of a safer option. Our website has a ton of information about the investment options as well. Very, very transparent reports about those investment options, the returns, how they're doing, of course. But every time somebody does contribute into their stable account, they're given the option of how they want to disperse those funds. So if you were to create a stable account for your loved one when they're 6 years old and you put money in every single year, and by the time they're 16 years old, there's going to be a lot of money in there, especially if you are choosing the investment option. So that's another thing to think about in addition to just kind of using it as a normal savings account. All right, so spending your funds. So I keep mentioning qualified disability expenses. That is a term that all ABLE programs use. It is a very, very broad term, but it must relate to disability, help maintain or improve health, independence, and quality of life. So these are some big icons of kind of what that means. I mean, obviously, housing and rent, basic living expenses, bills, health and wellness, transportation, assistive technology. Those are all big items that's going to improve somebody's quality of life, especially improving their health and their independence and quality of life if it relates to the disability. But we get a lot of questions about, can I use it on vacation? Can I use it for day-to-day expenses on Amazon, to the movies? Of course you can. It's your stable account funds. It's improving your health. It's improving your life, and it's improving your quality of life. And if somebody is working and putting those funds into their stable account, those funds in the stable account can be used on those day-to-day expenses as well. So we just sort of kind of bring it back to qualified disability expenses when we get asked, well, what can I use my funds on? This is the best answer that we can say. And then, of course, our website has more information about exactly what that means as well. So the account can be spent, or you can withdraw funds in various ways. Any money that goes into a stable account can be taken out and withdrawn and sent to an external other checking or savings account. You can pay bills with a third-party check, so that would come from our vendor. And then we have an incredible feature, our Visa card. So our stable Visa card is a loadable prepaid card that is linked to this stable account, but not directly linked. So that means that if you have $20,000 in your stable account and you've got $600 for expenses for the month of November, you can actually transfer $600 or $800 to the Visa card and spend the Visa card much quicker than you could if you needed to withdraw a large amount from the stable account in general. The Visa card can be used anywhere Visa is accepted, which is a lot of places. And the best part about it is that it's the quickest way that you can also track your expenses. So the stable account is all ABLE programs actually are overseen by the IRS. So it's always important to keep track of money going in, just like money going out. So the Visa card on the back end has line by line transactions that you can see exactly where the money was spent. You can see all the times that money was taken from the stable card to the stable account to the Visa card. It's really great because I feel like it allows families to slowly give their loved one the financial freedom to use their stable account funds. There's a lot of bells and whistles in the back end. You can limit merchants, you can limit expenses in terms of how much money can be spent in a certain time period. There's just a lot that you can do on the back end. So if mom and dad are wanting their son to have that Visa card, they can still kind of make sure that he's using those funds on a certain type of expense if they're wanting to slowly but surely give him that independence. So it's a really great feature. I think that also as I mentioned, it's the quickest way that you can spend those funds, but it is a very protected process of spending those funds as well. Once you set up your stable account on your portal, you'll actually, and at the end of the slide, I'm going to show you what the portal looks like, but there's an option to sign up for the card. So if you create your stable account, you actually have to sign up for the card separately. It's from a separate vendor. They would mail that to you, and then you have a login to log into the back end of the Visa card. So for the state of Ohio, very minimal cost for owning a stable account. There is no fee for the Visa card, which is fantastic. But for the account itself, it's $27 per year, and that amount is charged to the account on a quarterly basis. And then here is the asset-based fees as well. Obviously, we have other states listed here just because we do have account holders in every state. And then this is just what I had mentioned earlier about the SSI considerations. A lot of the account holders are on SSI. So we do like to mention about that $100,000 balance limit that might be put into place that could limit someone's eligibility for SSI. And then in all states, there is something called Medicaid payback. So if an individual is receiving Medicaid at any time, they are subject to Medicaid asset recovery. So if they were to pass away and they were receiving Medicaid for a duration of their time, Medicaid in the state of Ohio could put a claim on their assets. Stable account obviously is considered an asset, so it is subject to that Medicaid payback. They can put a claim, it's not a guarantee, but there are a lot of protections put in place for the funds in a stable account. So if my daughter has a stable account and she's also receiving Medicaid for a few years, but she has a stable account for much longer than the time that she was on Medicaid, and she passes away, Medicaid can only put a claim on the funds in the account that was put into place while she was also getting services under Medicaid. But there's protections put into place for that. So I could still use those stable account funds on funeral expenses. I could use them on outstanding bills for qualified disability expenses. I could take care of the estate before I needed to close the estate. So that's just something to consider. A lot of obviously individuals are on Medicaid. It's a great program for those that really truly do need it, but it's worth mentioning just because of the asset recovery that Medicaid does put for all assets for an individual. And I do encourage any families listening to go to the Medicaid website. There's a lot of information for the asset recovery piece as well, just because we do get a lot of questions about this, and the Treasurer's Office is not linked to the Medicaid agency in any way, but it's something that's worth mentioning. And I don't necessarily want to speak about something that we don't really work directly with, but do want to encourage you to go to the Medicaid website to learn more about this process. So special needs trusts are an amazing tool. Obviously, those are done privately through an attorney or a guardianship estate attorney. We've worked really closely with a few in the state of Ohio. If you ever need any recommendations for those, there's a lot of those around Ohio that have devoted their life and their career to improving and being a resource for families for long-term estate planning. But trusts are great because you can actually take money from a special needs trust and put them right into a stable account. Then the funds in that stable account can be used on qualified disability expenses much quicker than having to go through the special needs trust. Obviously, special needs trusts have unlimited cash options, but there's a lot of different kind of back end and tax rules between the both. There's no comparisons. They're actually very much complementary tools that can be used between one another. So we do encourage families to also look at this option as well, in addition to stable account. So this is what the portal looks like. So as soon as you create your stable account, this is the screen that you'll see. So you'll see the total balance. You can see your contributions for the year that you were in, just so that you're made aware of how much you've contributed and how much you have left to contribute before that resets for the year. You can also set goals. And then there's a little page kind of at the bottom. There's way more details about the investment options on the lower left-hand corner. But in addition to that, this is also the area that you can sign up to have a prepaid card sent to you in your name. The stable account has one beneficiary on the account, but you can have multiple Visa cards for the stable account. So if mom and dad want to have a Visa card linked to the same stable card and they want to give their son one as well, that option is available as well. Our website is also accessible friendly. And then our customer service line has options for people that might need assistance with hearing or ASL. So we do have a lot of options available for families and individuals that need assistance with just setting the account up, walking through the process of the eligibility and the step-by-step process of enrollment. And then of course, any questions you have on your portal, the management of the funds, our customer service line is always available to help with those questions. In addition to Becca and I, of course, our website, I encourage everyone to go to our website. We have a really great 2-minute stable account enrollment video that we just made that is on our homepage as well. I mentioned this to Lori on our intro call, I think probably a few weeks ago. I feel like summer flew by and now we're in the fall. But we recently were at DSACO, Down Syndrome Association of Central Ohio, last month, and we got to do a really great interview testimonial video with Kyle McKay, their staff photographer. Not sure if anyone on the call knows him, but he's wonderful. So our team is always looking for ways to promote this program. And the best way to promote this program is to interview and highlight and spotlight the account holders that are working and using their funds the best way that they can. And the ones that are really using the account and it's making a difference in their life. So I've mentioned this to Lori. That video we're hoping to put out in October. October is Disability Employment Awareness Month, and we've got some really great communicative pieces that are going to be going out very shortly. But if there's anyone that you know that has a Stable account that is really proud to tell their story, please send me an email, because I love to hear about it. I also love to learn about the features, and if there's anything that you think on the back end could improve, we love to hear that as well. But more importantly, we love to hear testimonials. So I've shared that with Lori. I'll definitely send that out as soon as it's on our social media as well. But for now, I guess I'll just kind of open it up to questions. I think I did see some come in the Q&A. But thank you again for letting Becca and I be here. As I mentioned, this program is so wonderful. And if there's any questions you have that I wasn't able to answer, if you have anything that you want to follow up with, please shoot me an email. Lori, feel free to share it. And I hope to hear from all of you. But for now, I guess I can open it to the Q&A if that's okay, Lori. Have anything else?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Okay. Do you want me to stop recording?
It's up to you.
I don't know if anything's very personal, and then I know I asked a couple of the questions, so I don't think anything's very personal. But if we do, and you want me to stop the recording, if anybody has a personal question, just please let me know, and I can just stop that.
Okay.
Okay. Do you want to go ahead and ask the question? Do you want me to ask them for you?
Sure, Lori. Yeah.
Okay, sure. Okay. So my question was, how long does it take to transfer the funds to the Visa card?
It takes 3 to 5 business days.
Okay. So similar to from the Stable account to like your checking.
Yes.
That's about the time. Okay.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. Can you give an example of something you cannot use the funds for?
Oh, that is a great question. We get that a lot. So I think that we usually just like to say that because this program is overseen by the IRS, it is important to keep track of receipts. So you want to make sure that you're keeping receipts on all of your transactions. At some point, you could be audited just like any American could if they're, having a financial account set up in their name. And the IRS could actually see that you used your Stable account funds on a transaction that was not considered a qualified disability expense. You would be penalized for just that transaction. So there could be a fee or a penalty for just that transaction that you made. I've been asked specific questions about what you can use your fund, what you shouldn't use your funds on, and we don't really give a direct answer for that, just because I think it kind of varies depending on the situation with the family. But we just like to leave it as keep receipts, and that the IRS could at some point want to look into that. And there is a penalty if something is not considered a qualified disability expense.
Okay. I asked, are they not trying to eliminate the Medicaid payback? I have heard that a number of different times, that the government or advocates are trying to have them eliminate that.
That's a great question. Yeah, that's a great question. There's actually a few states that are doing that exactly, that they're trying to push for legislation to remove the Medicaid payback for Stable accounts. I think the Medicaid asset recovery would stay in place, but Stable accounts would be removed from that list of assets. I have not heard anything recently for the state of Ohio, but it's one of those grassroots legislative efforts that they do make a difference if it gets enough traction. And I know that the Medicaid asset recovery is a hot topic in itself. Families feel that Stable accounts should be protected from the asset recovery. So I definitely see both sides of that for sure. And I don't know, I haven't heard anything, but we'll see if anything does happen down the road with that.
Okay, thank you. Is this presentation available after this? Yes, we recorded it. Can you send me the slides, Elena?
Yes.
Are you okay with that? Okay, then I can send everybody the slides.
Yep, I can send you the slides, Lori. And then our website also has our tons of resources. But we also have our flyers in PDF form. So if you ever wanted to download our flyers, it's a 2-pager flyer, and just have that as a resource. Feel free to do that as well, but I can definitely email the slide deck.
Great, thank you. What are the tax consequences and or benefits of stable accounts?
So the tax consequences, I think that, as I just mentioned, that if you do use your stable account funds on a transaction that is not considered a qualified disability expense, there would be a penalty for that transaction. I don't know what those penalties are. But if you are contributing into a stable account, there is a $4,000 tax credit that you would receive when you were filing your taxes. When you were going through your taxes, there's actually a question: have you contributed to a stable account in the previous year? So that's where you would fill in information about your stable account and the tax-free expenses.
Okay.
It is also similar to, it is identical to the 529 college savings plan tax credits as well. So if a family is contributing into a stable account and also a 529 college savings account, it's the same tax credits as well.
Okay. Great. Does anybody have any other questions? If you want to unmute yourself and ask, feel free. Does anybody on this call have a stable account?
Oh, I would love to know that. Yes.
Yeah, we've got one, Lori and Elena. I set it up back in July, I guess, and I have not linked it to her bank account, and we haven't created the Visa yet. But those are all things that are coming. So, but my question is, it was the question that just got added to the chat. If you choose one of the investment options, do those grow tax-free?
That is a good, yes, they do. Yes, they do. They do grow tax-free. Yes. And then I believe I mentioned this, but any returns from the investment options that you choose are not considered part of the contribution limit for the account for that year.
I mean, I think they were very easy to set up. Dan, did you find it?
Yeah, I did. The only thing, I guess there was a little bit of confusion on my part when it came to the eligibility. And I think I initially started setting up her account as she was kind of in her name, but she's only 17, so wasn't 18 yet. So then I had to flip over and set it up as a parent. But I think I got lost in the weeds a little bit with being able to prove eligibility, and like I said, I might have been kind of going off into areas that I shouldn't have been, but something to do with I don't know if I needed like a letter from a doctor or this or that, and I just kind of ignored all that, and I set it up. So I'm not sure exactly what I did, but other than that bit of confusion, yeah, it was very easy.
And you did the online enrollment?
Online.
Okay. Yep. The program itself will never require you to send in any type of documentation to prove the disability. Usually when that's listed there or it's mentioned. It's just sort of kind of like a reminder of, you know, at some point, maybe down the road, if the paper enrollment process is taking a long time, that there might be something in addition, very similar to if you're going through the steps of proving, you know, last address you lived at, your social security number. If any time that step is, there's an issue with that step, there might be further documentation might be required at some point.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. I'm glad to hear that it was easy though. We like to hear that, you know, it does take some time to set up, but of course, as soon as it's set up, the portal hopefully is very easy to use and to manage.
I would say from personal experience, it's very easy. It's easy to transfer funds to and from. I did not know until tonight that you could have the SSI check directly deposited or the wages. So we still have checking accounts and we transfer funds. Like my son wanted to go to a camp this summer that cost quite a bit of money, and luckily he had that money saved up in his stable account, so I was able to transfer that money to his checking and pay for the camp through that. So that was definitely a benefit.
Lori and Elena, Lori, when you linked the stable account to his checking account, that was a simple process as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And is that done from the portal page, Elena? Like when you first go into the main screen, is that where the link is to connect the two accounts? Okay.
Yep. And then I know I had mentioned the payroll direct deposit piece. So if an individual is working, they can tell their employer, hey, here's my, you know, account number, routing number to my stable account. In addition to that, another thing that's so wonderful is that, you know, Lori, if you know, you wanted to put a percentage of your paycheck into your, you know, child's stable account as well. So that's another way that, you know, it's kind of that quick process. So we've been doing some really great outreach to counties and organizations to bring up that feature. Obviously, if you're taking it from a checking account to your stable account, it's the same initiative, but of course, just having that direct deposit piece, we feel like it's a new feature that we're really proud to be able to mention to families as well, and employers for that too. There's a lot of employers around the state of Ohio that make a point to make a difference and hire people that are in the disability community. So those are advocates for the program as well. It sort of goes hand in hand with it. So
yeah, I would agree.
I think one of the things that I like, well, there are many things I like about it, but when you talked about being able to make distributions from a special needs trust into the account because of the greater flexibility in terms of spending, I think that's huge because of, you know, some of the limitations with the special needs trust. So that's I think a great benefit as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. And I'm trying to get my one son's employer to, because they contribute to a 401k, but he had to stop contributing because it reached almost a $2,000 limit. So, which is very unfortunate because, you know, everybody else that works there can do that and you know, save quite a bit of money, but he cannot. But I'm still working on it to try to get them to talk to you guys. There was another question. Is there an age limit to opening an account?
Well, that's a good question. So there is not an age limit, but the eligibility for not just stable, but all 47 ABLE programs across the country is that the disability or disorder must have been diagnosed before you were 26. In 2026, that 26 is bumping up to 46, which is amazing because that obviously will open the door for a lot of different individuals and families with different situations that happened after 26. So as I mentioned, when you do enroll in our program. You don't have to prove or send in any type of documentation, but that is the IRS cast that eligibility piece for all ABLE programs across the country. So we follow that until 2026, which will be here before we know it. It's a great accomplishment that obviously happened in the ABLE community, because when this was passed in 2014, everyone obviously thought, well, this is amazing, but why 26? So it took a few years for this obviously to pass again, and for that age act to increase, which is obviously a huge accomplishment in the community. So we'll be doing some really great outreach for that when that happens, of course, but always worth mentioning as well for now when we do connect with organizations.
One more question I was thinking of, because I know somebody told me a while ago, like if you were to purchase, let's say you had enough money in your account to purchase a home for yourself, does that count against you? Did you talk about that?
Well, you know what I didn't talk about, and I cannot believe I didn't bring this up. So this is Travis. He is an employee at Pickaway County Board of DD, and I think he lives in Circleville, Ohio, about 40 minutes from Columbus. He's another first account holder in the state. And he actually last March came to Stable Account and withdrew a large amount of money to go towards land that he bought from his Stable Account funds. And he also built a wheelchair accessible house, ranch style home for that land. So he put his Stable Account funds in addition to other funds for that house, because that is a massive qualified disability expense. Housing, rent, improving your life, making you happy. Who doesn't want to build a house from the ground up? That's I tell this story all the time. It's an amazing accomplishment, but I don't believe that it would count against you. I know that it would not count against you, but I know that sometimes individuals are on a housing credits, or they might get rent assistance, and the people that provide the rent assistance might look at your assets as a whole, and they might say, well, you have too much money in your Stable Account, you don't qualify for housing, or you don't qualify for rent assistance. The Stable Account is a protected account. So just like it doesn't make you ineligible for benefits like SSI and Medicaid, housing assistance, rental assistance, those are very similar to those kind of means tested benefits. So I think that, Laura, if your question about just could it penalize you for having a house or an apartment, if that's what your question was. But when you brought that up, I thought I got to bring up Travis's story, because obviously it's so inspiring. But we've been asked before about kind of like the rental assistance programs and how all that kind of fits in. So
that cannot, the rental assistance programs cannot count that against you if you have money in your, just like SSI and Medicaid should not be looking at that as well.
Yes,
right.
The Social Security Administration has some helpful links about some of those, like HUD and even some of those, I think it's state by state, but food assistance programs, some of those other programs, but we really just speak on behalf of SSI and Medicaid in terms of means tested benefits. But we've also mentioned heavily that the Stable Account is that protected sacred account that is protecting you from losing your means tested benefits. So just worth mentioning about some of those other ones, just because that is definitely one of the biggest qualified disability expenses, and the most important piece of someone's life obviously is housing and rent. So
right. So if they purchase a home or build a home with their Stable Account funds, that should not be counted against them as an asset to Medicaid or SSI.
No.
Okay, perfect. Okay, another question. If someone puts their income from a job into a Stable Account, do they still need to report that income to Social Security for SSI?
So if you're taking your income from a job and putting a percentage or all of it into the Stable Account, do you have to report it? Do you have to report the income, or do you have to report the Stable Accounts?
I think they want to know if they were reporting the income to Social Security.
You would still report the income. SSI would be, I believe SSI requires you to report any income, But again, as long as you're not going over these contribution limits, any money in that stable account is protected from your losing your eligibility for SSI. So you would report even your stable account funds from the income, in addition to the income. But as long as it's in that stable account, it's still protected from eligibility for SSI.
Okay. Yeah, you still have to report it, and your income is still going to count for SSI purposes and Medicaid, right? But
right. But SSI wouldn't say, oh, let's say you have a stable account for 4 years and that 30,000 is now 60,000. They wouldn't look at 60,000 and say you have too much for SSI, because that's why stable accounts exist. It's that wonderful account that you can put money into and still be eligible for SSI as well.
Right.
The only thing that we've heard recently is that $100,000 limit that they're looking into, is that if you're close to that 100,000, SSI could put a claim, and you could be at risk of losing your eligibility for SSI.
Okay. One more question. Can Medicaid take money from a stable account if it was gifted by someone, a relative, who then goes on Medicaid before the 5-year look-back period ends?
I might need to read this. Hold on, let me pull up the chat. I might need to read this. So, can Medicaid take money from a stable account if it was gifted by someone? I'm going to say yes, but let me read the rest of the piece. Medicaid can put a recovery on the assets in the stable account. Doesn't matter where the money came from. So I'll just answer that and then continue on. By someone, a relative, who then goes on Medicaid before the 5-year look-back period ends. I'm not sure what the 5-year look-back period is in terms of what Medicaid is. I'm not familiar with what the 5-year period is.
Does that person wanna? I'll stop recording.
Okay.
Okay, stop. Oh.
Yeah, hi, Lori. This is Nick.